Well, Thomasine sends her love to you, and we're looking forward to. I'm looking forward to when she'll actually give you another message. So, I'm just throwing that out there so you guys can kind of, you can email her or say a few things. Thomasine has a lot on the inside of her. She's gone through a lot, so she has a lot to say. And a lot of not just nuggets, but a lot of things, especially when we talk about this is us, when we look at who we are, what we go through, what happens to us when we go through different things and the habits that we have as we go through. Thomasine is a rich source of God working through someone who is in the middle of change at the same time carrying out those changes that God wants us to do so that we can get the victory that he has planned for us. So today we're going to talk about, again, the entire series is, we're talking about resolutions and setting goals, but I want to focus on, our experiences, because that's one of the things that holds us back is, the experiences that we've had. Those experiences lay down basically the things they actually lay down patterns for us, and those old habits are hard to break, even if you want to, when you try to. And so if your goals that you're setting are disconnected from the habits that you have, it's not going to go very good. We need to learn how to create habits for the goals that we have. And so this series that's one of the things that this series is focusing on. And I want you to join me today in talking about, what's holding us back. Last week, we talked about one day at a time. We need to basically kind of slow down from the week before where we said not so fast. But last week, we talked about one day at a time, where we're talking about how to create habits and maintain habits. Well, today, I'm looking at what I've learned through and what psychologists have learned. Psychology has discovered that one of the main things that hold us back, one of the main things that our mind wants is order. One of the main things that our mind wants is some predictable, pattern of what we're doing. And so we've discovered that the value of habits in how our brain works, that's how it creates habits. As it looks at a pattern, we do something once, we get a pattern for it, and the brain is looking for patterns all the time so that it can repeat those patterns. And that's how we form habits, from those repeated behaviors, whether it's a successful behavior or if it's a behavior that's actually damaging our health or damaging our family. Whatever it is, as you start to repeat it, you end up creating a habit for that. So the brain loves to do this. And many times the things that have, created those habits for us is not necessarily what we are thinking about right now. Since it's a part of our habits, then we don't have to think about it. See, most of the things that you do, your body's on autopilot when you do it. You don't have to consciously think about it. I know you're aware that you don't have to think about breathing. You don't have to think about your heart beating. But think about this. If you were driving a car, you don't have to think about whether you're turning left, turning right, whether you stand in this lane, stand in that lane. Now, when you first learn, you have to do that. But once you are in that pattern, once you've learned it, once you've gone through the steps that it takes to actually get the skills, once you've got the skills and once you've practiced it over and over and over again, you don't even think about it. For some of you, probably like me, you'll end up driving somewhere and you don't even remember, half the things you saw on your way to where you were going. Your body knows, your entire body is involved, and you get in there. You don't have to really think when you see a red light. You see it out of your peripheral, and you start slowing down, and and you're not really just staring at the light waiting for it to turn green. You get looking all around you, doing things in the car. Some of you doing things you shouldn't be doing in the car. Some of you eating. Some of you putting on makeup. Some of you on the phone. But you still know when that light changes. because of the habits that you have for driving. So if we want to modify our behavior that we have for the best that we want out of us, then we have to learn to employ the part of our mind that actually controls our actions habitually, controls our habits, control our actions without us thinking about it. And that's your unconscious mind. See, one of the things that I've learned this, while studying for this series is that according to neuroscientists, our actions, everything, when you do things with your hands, with your eyes, your conscious mind is only involved in 5% of that. 95% of the things that you do, of our actions, it comes from our subconscious mind, things that have been packed in there over and over and over again, and your mind is making decisions about it. What should you be doing? What should I not be doing? And you're going through things so fast at lightning speed, your mind is thinking about the things that even if you, for example, if you're in a conversation with someone and then you realize this conversation is not going the way I thought it would go, you can switch in midstream and start saying things that they had no idea that that's what you were going to say. But it's because your mind is at work. You're not just focused on one thing. Your subconscious is at work, telling you the words to say, telling you the inflections in your face. Everything is going on. And so many times whatever created all of that stuff that we have that we do automatically, it started with words, and that's what we're going to talk about, the patterns and how those patterns are formed today. But it starts with words. And so I have a question to ask you. Many of you, the things that you do, the things that are holding you back, the things that it could be based on what someone has said. And I do want to share, a question that I want you to see. And so please take a look at your screen here. I'm going to get it up for you. Here. Now, can you remember words that were spoken to you, that someone said to you about yourself that may have given you a negative image of yourself and who you are, especially when you were younger? How many of you had some of those kind of situations where someone has said something to you? I'm starting to look at my Facebook here. Good morning to some of you. I usually don't do this after I get in the message, but good morning, Jolie. And those of you who are joining us on our church app there. Again, if you're trying to join us there, just go to gtmusa.org/Sunday and follow the prompts there. You can jump right in. If you want to chat with us, you just log in, and which all you need for logging in, if you're not already in our database, all you need is just your email address and your name. I believe that's all you need. And then you can chat with the rest of us and respond if you like. If you have questions, please go ahead and ask questions. But can you remember words that were spoken to you or about you that, have given you a negative image of who you are, and that's possibly impacting who you are today in a negative way? Or can you remember words that were spoken to you that were positive, but it's still impacting you today? One example I have for you is in growing up, my parents, probably because of their parents and how they grew up, but my parents didn't, say a lot to me personally, and I don't know about all the rest of my siblings, especially the younger ones. Seems like things changed when the younger ones were growing up. But when I was growing up, I've never heard my dad say, "I'm proud of you." But that's not a negative thing on his part, because I have caught him talking to other people about me in positive ways that actually made me feel pretty good and know that he was proud of me. And those things have impacted my life over and over and over again. One good example, and my siblings, they laugh about this all the time, is because especially when I was younger, I think people say I have a big head. I think I've always had a big head, even before my body got this big, before I grew up. And so when I was young, people used to talk about my head all the time, the old egghead Woody, and they talked about it. But one of the things, we were in a conversation, and everyone was in the room, and people were talking about. I think it was a Christmas, and someone bought me a hat for Christmas, and it didn't quite fit, and so they were talking about how big my head was. And then my dad chimed in and said, but there's a lot of sense in that head. And so he's always said things like that. And I've caught him talking to other people about me, which definitely made a positive impact on me and the way I thought about myself. But many of you, you didn't get that. You got something negative, whether it was that or a teacher, someone in school, someone from your church even. Some people say some things that they don't realize how damaging it is to you, and they never know, but you go through it. But here's what we're going to talk about today. What if your pattern of thinking, based on what someone else said that was possibly negative for you, what if that pattern of thinking is wrong? And when I say wrong, I'm not just talking about improper. I'm not just talking about, not the right way, but I'm talking about wrong, like unfair. It left you in a damaging situation, like we were just talking about. It left you where it impacted your life in a negative way, and they had no idea they were doing this. But what if your pattern of thinking has been about yourself now has been impacted by some things that were said then that were damaging and that actually harm your real potential? See, most of us don't really know the potential that we have. Most of us have no idea what we really could produce, what we really could get out of ourselves. But there's so much of negativity, and not just currently, but from years ago, that could cause you to not move forward, to want to hold back. And a lot of those kinds of things is what's holding us back. So another question that I don't have on the screen for you, but what would you be willing to do to have and express the image of you that God has for you? See, that's what we need to do. And what would you be willing to do to be able to express that image? What would you do? What would you be willing to do to have that kind of image and that kind of confidence about yourself, that you knew that this is what God was saying to you, this was what God created you to do, God created you to be, and you were actually moving into that? Well, I want to share some scripture with you today. Not just one person, but specifically one person in a group of people. So if you would join me, I'm going to be reading out of the book of Joshua, and I want to give you a little history about Joshua first. This is another powerful scripture in Joshua. I grew up on these scriptures, but in Joshua, the first chapter, Joshua is discussing. And first of all, it starts off, let me give you some history before we get to the verse that I'm going to talk about, because the verse starts off saying, be strong and courageous. But the beginning of this verse, God is talking to Joshua, and God is saying to Joshua, my servant Moses is dead. Now, you need to understand who Moses was to the entire Hebrew culture. Moses was like the man. Moses was God's man. He was the main man. He led them out of Egypt. So when God says, my servant Moses is dead, Moses is gone. His influence is no longer here because, as from his life. And so God has said to Joshua, my servant Moses is dead. And therefore I'm saying to you that you will lead these people over this Jordan. They had been wandered in the wilderness for some 40 years, and from the time that they actually left Egypt. And now Moses is dead. Joshua was one of the ones who, especially at this point, Joshua was one of one of two of the only original people at this point when this is being said that was still in the group and still headed to the promised land. And so God said to Joshua, be strong and courageous, because you'll lead these people to inherit the land that I swore to their ancestors. So God is following up on a promise that he has made. And he's saying to Joshua, you are the next person to make sure that this promise is kept and that it comes to pass. And so he says to him, be strong and very courageous. Now, we just read where it said be strong and courageous. Now he says, be strong and very courageous, and be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. So again, God is having Joshua think back on what Moses has spoken to him, what Moses said to him. And Moses had plenty to say to Joshua and the children of Israel before he passed away. He said to Joshua, do not turn from it, from the left or the right, that you may be successful wherever you go. So what God is really doing here is laying down some principles, but I want to go through this and then break it down so you have a concept of these verses. I'm just a couple more verses, then we're going to jump into each one of these as we go into it. The next thing he says to Joshua is, keep this book of the law. This is the book of the law that Moses had written. He's saying, keep this book of the law always on your lips. In other words, always be saying what's in what I've said to you. Always be saying what I've said. And then he said, meditate on it day and night so that you might be careful to do it. It sounds like if you're going to do it, you need to meditate on it. And we're going to get into this. I'm so excited about this. So, because then the next part of that, the next last sentence in that verse says, then you will be prosperous and successful in whatever you do. So then the last verse here that we're covered today, he says, have I not commanded you? In other words, what I'm saying to you is not just a good idea, but this is a command. I am commanding you. Haven't I commanded you? Be strong and courageous. That means this is 3 times now that he said, be strong and courageous. And then he follows this up with, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. What God is saying to Joshua here is, have the guts to believe what I'm saying about you. Have the guts, have whatever it is on the inside of you to believe what I'm saying about you in the face of the adversity, in the face of the circumstances that are surrounding you, in face of all the different voices that you've heard. For example, let's cover some history here of what Joshua had to deal with. First of all, let's go all the way back to when Joseph was the prince in Egypt. That when Joseph's father, his brothers, his siblings, and their families, when they went into Egypt, there were 70 Hebrews that were now in Egypt. They began to multiply there, and over a period of, especially in slavery, over some 400 years or so, when they left, when God delivered them, and there's 2 schools of thought on this. One school of thought says 2 million. That's what you read in your Bible. 2 million left Egypt, and some says 30,000. Well, however many it was, it still was a miracle. God delivered them from Egypt, and they wandered in the wilderness. Now, let's just go with the 2 million. You got 2 million people in the wilderness who God has delivered from Egypt. Now, when they first left Egypt, think about this. When they first left Egypt, on their way, Pharaoh was still chasing them. After he had agreed to let them go, he had changed his mind again after, 10 plagues. And now he wants to come back and capture them. And God opened up the Red Sea for them. So as they're going through the Red Sea, Pharaoh and his army comes in after them. Now, think about this. God opens up the Red Sea. They go through the Red Sea. They come out on the other side. They're all excited. God closes the Red Sea while Pharaoh's down in there on its way up to get them. So, which is another miracle. And now they're on the other side. They're excited. They're dancing. They're rejoicing. Do you not know, within 30 days, within 1 month, so you need to hear me really, really good. Within 1 month, some of them, and I don't mean a few, some of them wanted to go back to Egypt. They wanted to go back to the place where they had come from. And I want to show you this. There's a scripture I want to read for you. I want to show it to you. In Exodus, it says, the whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. You see, that's 1 month because they left on the 15th day of the first month. So it's been 1 month since they left Egypt, and now they want to go back. Why is that? We shouldn't just pass, over this real quick. 1 month after leaving Egypt, because of their mindset, because their mind had, even though they were in slavery, they had become used to it. They had habits based on it. Their responses was based on themselves as slaves. And so their mindset was they really didn't know how to be free. And see, many of us, we have that same issue. We really don't know how to be free. We really don't know how to express the freedom that God has given us because we've lived in that kind of thinking for so long. One of the things that I learned and said after studying this is one of the greatest threat, or actually the greatest threat to you becoming uniquely better in any area of your life, and there's multiple areas. I always talk about 6 or 7, whether you're talking about your family life, your financial life, or your spiritual life, with God. That's separate from your church life, or your social life, any of those, business life, if to become uniquely better in any of those areas of your life, the greatest threat is your own pattern of thinking. Your own pattern of thinking will actually grab you, even though you want to change some behavior so that you can actually realize what you're dreaming about. You can realize what you're setting goals about, but you can't because your habits won't let you. And your habits are based on your pattern of thinking. Isn't that amazing? And the reason that works that way is because everything that you have experienced, you and I, everything that you as a human have experienced, it's stored in your mind. It's stored in between your conscious and your subconscious mind. Excuse me. Everything that you've experienced is stored there. It's somewhere. And there are ways to pull some of it up. There's ways to pull, your thoughts up. But we want to cover this. I want you to see and understand how that you can get a handle on the things that are holding you back, because everything that you've ever experienced, every negative experience, every positive experience, it's stored in your mind, just like on a hard drive. And if you put in the right sequences, you can pull that up. But that's a combination of your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. It's in there. That data is being used. It even though you don't even realize when you call it up, it's being called up to create patterns of thinking that will eventually turn into beliefs. So you get these patterns of thinking that turns into beliefs, that turns into your systems of belief, that then dictates your actions. And that's how that pattern goes. And I want to show you this sequence. So take a look here. I'll give you a full screen of this so that you can see this in a good way. This is basically how, the human mind works. It starts out with words. They're on the top right side of your screen. It starts out with words that you've heard, words that people say to you, words that you've heard people say about you, whether they're positive or whether they're negative. And those words in your own mind, those words create pictures. Those words create images from what someone says. When someone says some words to you, you don't think the word out. Like, if, for example, if I said dog to you, you don't think DOG. You see a picture of a dog, whether it's your dog or a dog that you've seen somewhere. You see a picture of a dog. You see an image of a dog. Well, that's the way the mind works. Words paint pictures on your mind. And so you hear words and they paint a certain picture. But the next step after the picture is the emotions that we attach to those words. We attach different emotions, whether it's positive or negative. We attach emotions to the pictures and the words that we've seen. And then the next step is from when we combine emotions with what's been said about us, what we've heard about us, and what we see ourselves, the image that we have of ourselves, and we attach certain emotions to that, then that becomes part of your belief system. And you start to believe certain things about yourself, even if you want to change it. In other words, your belief system has been built because of the words, pictures, and emotions. If you want to change your beliefs, you got to change the words, pictures, and emotions. You don't just flip and change what you believe. You got to change it one step at a time. For example, here, when you think about your words, the words that creates pictures of yourself, and you actually attach emotions to those pictures, whether the words, you get pictures from the words, you see yourself, you see the images of what, those words have painted, and then you start to attach, feelings to it. That's what emotions basically are, feelings. I used to have a hard time with emotions. And you've heard me say this before. And Thomasine finally brought me a sheet of paper with different faces and said, "These are emotions." And so I've learned a few. So sometimes words that people will say will make you feel worthless, make you feel unaccepted. I went through some of those things as I was growing up. Make you feel undesired. Those are emotions. Make you feel less than, like you don't matter. And many times the words, when you see the picture of that, you see yourself. Those words actually create the picture of you in that situation. And then you attach those emotions to it. These emotions and pictures, they're not bound by time. Some of the things happened when you were 8 years old and now you're 50, but it's just as real today as it was 40 years ago. Those same, and you don't have to think about the words. In many cases, I can't remember the words that were said, but I can remember my feelings, and it's all in there. And now you formed a belief about yourself based on those feelings and that the words painted, and that the pictures that the image that you see of yourself in that situation. And so as you move through this all the way around from words, pictures, and emotions, you get to the place where your belief system is set up to hold on to whatever those things painted for you, even though you want to change, even though you want to be something different. So now let's go through these verses that I just read to you, and I want to show you how God takes this same principle and, speaking to Joshua, how God begins to paint a different picture for Joshua so Joshua can have some different beliefs. And we have to learn to do the exact same thing. So let's look at that first verse that we looked at earlier, where he said to Joshua, he said, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. See, God wants us, when he says be strong, he's talking about the strength. This is mental strength. This is amazing because, however strong you are in your hands and your loins, that doesn't get you through. When he says to Joshua, be strong and courageous, this is mental strength. Courage is mental activity. He's saying to Joshua, be strong and courageous. Courage has to do with your mental ability to focus on something different than what's physically in front of you, and focus on it and see yourself not being held back by it, but see yourself moving through it. Actually see yourself doing something different than you would have done, doing something in the face of fear. And fear comes in many forms, whether you're just hesitant, but courage is the ability to actually move past that threshold to take action. And many times we don't take any action because we don't spend enough time creating courage. And that's really what God is saying to Joshua when he says, be strong. He's saying, create some courage. See, courage is not something that you ask God to give you. You know, God, give me courage to do this. No, courage is something that you have to develop. It's mental activity. When God said to Joshua, be strong and courageous, he's saying the things that I just told you that you were going to do, that you're going to lead these people across this Jordan. This is you that I'm talking to. Now, Joshua wasn't like some young boy. He's at this time in his life, he's gone through some things. He was one of the original spies that went spied out the land with, the 12 spies that went spied out the land. 10 of them came back with a negative report. Well, Joshua was one of the ones with a positive report that said we can do this. And so was Caleb. And at this point, Joshua and Caleb are the only two original Hebrews that's ready to go into the promised land. And God is saying, be strong and courageous. Exercise your mind to be courageous. And that's what courage really is exercising some new words, some new pictures in your mind so that you can take some new actions. So when he says, be strong and courageous because you'll lead these people to inherit the land that I swore to their ancestors that I would give them this land. Now, when he says this, he's given Joshua some brand new words. God began to paint a different picture in Joshua's mind. God paints a different picture with words in Joshua's mind. When he said, be strong and courageous, not as I said, this is not something that God gives him. It's that mental strength to see beyond what's presently holding you back. And look at the next thing he said. He said, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law by my servant Moses gave you. Don't turn from it from the right or the left. This is like a formula. He's already told him, you're going to lead these people over into the land that I promised them. I made promises to these people generations ago, and now you are the man that's going to lead them into the promised land. So be strong and very courageous. Use your mind a lot. See, sometimes the way we grew up, we thought everything was so spiritual that we didn't think it was good to use our mind. But you need to get some word of some promises that God has promised you. Get those promises in your mind over and over again. We'll talk a little bit more about it as we go through. But when he says be strong, do it, vehemently. Those new pictures, get some new words, new pictures of yourself. And the next thing he says, be careful to obey. Now you take this mental strength. This is the strength to disregard your previous experience. That's the strength to disregard it. It's still there, but you can look beyond it. You can see beyond it. And now you have the mental strength to embrace the new words that's coming. You have the mental strength to embrace the new pictures that you see. That's what God is saying to Joshua. Now look at the next thing that he says there. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. This is very important right here. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Now, I've been reading this scripture for decades. When I was a kid, I remember this is just a funny for you to remember, but don't tell nobody. When I was first learning this scripture, when it says, keep this book of the law always on your lips, actually, the King James Version is what I, memorized. And it says, don't let this book depart from your mouth. This law, the book of the law, depart from your mouth. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Seems like you were wanted to depart from your mouth. Seems like you were wanted to, come out of your lips. Well, this is a better rendition of that, because he does want this book to actually come across your lips. He does want this book to move forward in your life. He does want this book to make a difference. He wants you to remember so that you may be careful to do everything that's written in it. This is so important right here. See, this part right here that he's talking about when he says meditate on it day and night, you take these words that I just painted for you is what he's telling Joshua. You take these words that I just painted for you, a picture of, and you meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and you will be successful. If you will take this formula and put it to work in your life, use your mental strength to regenerate new pictures based on what I've said about you instead of what you've actually experienced. And this is not to discount your experience. Your experiences are real. But God is saying, I want you to overwrite that. I want you to rewrite what's happened to you, rewrite it in a way and create new pictures from the words that I'm giving you. And I want you to think about that all the time. Meditate on that. So this is, now God is creating some pictures. He's having, meditate is where you create pictures. Meditate, the words created pictures of yourself, to which you are attaching emotions to. The things that made you feel worthless before, made you feel unaccepted before. These words makes you know that you are accepted in the beloved of God, that you are more than what people have said that you were. God has said that this is what you will do. You see, you have some self-confidence, and you can attach some different emotions to these things that can make a difference in your life. And that's the new pictures that you want to create. And so he says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. You see, the fear and discouragement are negative emotions. And he wants us now, he's telling Joshua, don't attach these negative emotions to what I'm saying to you. But just the opposite. He gives him a reason. He says, don't be discouraged, don't be afraid, because I am with you. And he had told him, just like he had said earlier, he says, I will be with you just like I was with Moses. I will be with you just like I was with Moses. And so Joshua knew he had been with Moses. He had seen the things that Moses had gone through and how God supported him. So now this is what builds your faith. When he says, I will be with you wherever you go, that's a new picture. That's something you can attach some emotions to. That's something you can be excited about, where you felt, unimportant before. God is saying, wherever you go, I will be with you. Now you know that God is with you. Now you can have some stronger beliefs. And now you've taken some new words, built some new pictures based on those words, and attached some positive emotions to those pictures and words, to the point where now you can believe. You have a whole brand new belief system about who you are. And many of us, if we don't take ourselves through this process, those things will hold us back forever. They'll hold you back from your greatest potential. You may you may do something great every now and then. For example, let me ask you this question. How many of you, you've had at least one great success in your life? You've done something awesome and you were very proud of it. Other people were proud of it. Well, if you did it once, you can do it again. So we need to learn how to repeat those kinds of things. And if you go back and look at what you did when you went through it, you probably overcame some things that some people said that were negative, or you didn't allow them to impact you. But anyway, we want to go through some steps here to where you can go through this. I'm going to give you something. And again, these steps are in the challenges. You can download them if you're on our website. If you just click, I think it's in the top right corner there where it just says weekly challenge. You can open it up there. You can read it later. You can download it. You can print it, whatever you want to do so that you can have it to operate on. But I'm going to go through them one step at a time here. You see, your challenge this week is to challenge yourself. So this is a different kind of challenge. I want you to challenge you. Instead of me challenging you, I want you to challenge yourself to be committed to a process. And remember, we talked about how important the process is. See, we don't like processes because a process is what you're in the middle of while you're getting to what you want to get to. Most of us, we just want to be there. We don't want to be in the trip. So we don't want to be tripping. Well, in this case, you want to enjoy the trip. So enjoy the trip. It may not be enjoyable, but realize that you got to go through this trip in order to make it to the destination that you want, because you have a destiny. God has given you that destiny on purpose because of who you are, who he created you to be, and he needs you in the earth to do that. And many of us, we've been held back by the old images that we have of ourselves. So your challenge this week is to challenge yourself to be committed to the process of becoming uniquely better every day in at least one of these areas. And I'll just show you a list. You've heard me talk about these areas before, but just pick one at a time and focus on it, whether it's your spiritual life, your mental life, physical life, if your family life, whatever, life you want to change. And ministry life has to do with just giving back to your community, giving back to the people that your spiritual family that's outside of your own family, your biological family. You see, we are unable to reach our goals. We're unable to reach our destinies because our mind would not allow us to. And our mind is holding us back. The mind develops a pattern as quickly as possible to maintain, predictability. That's just the way it works. You hear something, you were just innocently there and someone said something to you that wasn't even true. And now it starts to impact you and to the point where you start to believe it. Well, we've been unable to reach our destiny, our goals, because our mind doesn't allow us to. So we want to learn how to break out of that and get a new mindset. So you should challenge yourself to figure it out, figure out what mindset and what beliefs that you're currently prioritizing. What is it that you're currently believing? What is it that you're currently handing over the power of your mind to that's holding you back from achieving your most significant potential, your greatest potential? Most of us, we don't know what our greatest potential is. We have no idea of who we really are. Remember last week when I talked to you about WWMNSD? What would my new self do? That's the question you need to keep asking yourself. What would my new self do? See, you cannot outperform the mental image that you have of yourself. That mental image that's stored in your subconscious mind, you cannot outperform it. You can't do better than what you think of yourself. I found a quote that says this in a more concise way, and that's this. Maxwell Maltz said this. He says, you can never outperform your own self-image. And he was a cosmetic surgeon. Can you imagine that? A cosmetic surgeon who said you can never outperform your own self-image. So you need to see yourself from the inside to create your self-image, not waiting for someone else to tell you about yourself. So here's some action steps to take us through this. These are some steps to expose the secret that's holding you back and stop the injustice, stop the repeating of the thinking patterns that's been holding you captive from your new behavior, but holding you into your old behavior. The revealed secret is that your old mindset is working day and night, overtime, to stop you from changing anything. Your mind wants to keep things as they were so that it can predict what's going to happen next. The minute you start putting new things in there, it's got to create brand new habits. But that's the part we don't like. So we just like to lean on what we've already learned. So here's some steps to get you out of that. So do the work now to discover why you sabotage your desired behavior. This sabotage, all sabotage means is that you undermine your own self. Usually undermine means someone else is undermining you. Undermine really just means, the actual root word comes from digging at the root of the foundation to cause, someone to be weaker. You undermine them in what they're doing to make it unstable. And it's usually, someone else doing it. Well, your mind does that to yourself. Your mind undermines your future. It means to dig a tunnel under something that is already fortified to overthrow it. Well, when you undermine yourself, now your mind is saying, I want this new picture that God has given me. Well, your old mind is at work to undermine you, to keep you from doing that. That's the sabotage. Without realizing it, you'll do something from your old behavior that will stop you dead in your tracks from accomplishing what you need to do, that you need new behavior in order to do. You need new behavior to do the things that you want to do. You need new habits to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And you don't have the habits to sustain it yet. And so you're not going to be successful at it. Even if you did it once or twice, it's going to slip through and you'll find yourself doing the same old things over and over again because your own mind is undermining you. It's setting you up to destroy slowly what you really want to accomplish, because the way your mind works is whenever you introduce something new to your new way of thinking, well, the brain goes to work digging at the foundation of that, trying to tear it apart, trying to make you doubt it, and to overthrow any new way of thinking that you have. It's at work to overthrow any of that stuff. It wants to keep things predictable. It wants to keep things, to where there's some certainty, and we as human beings we want. It's normal, so it's not. I don't want you to think that you're not normal if you think like that. It's normal. It's the same reason why you trust sitting in a chair. You sat in that chair 5 times and it didn't break. You believe you can sit in it again. Well, if you want to sit in a new chair, you need to not just focus on this old chair saying, I'm just going to sit right here. You need to figure out if this new chair can hold you too, so that you can move on and sit in a new chair. That's basically the way the human mind works. And so what do you have to believe? What do you believe about yourself that does not correspond with what God says about you? What is it? This question should get you thinking. This question, and not just your spiritual life. When I say that correspond with what God says about you, I'm talking about many of you. You need to change some things in your physical life, whether it's your health, eating right, your blood pressure, whether it's you need to exercise, whether you need to lose some weight. In many of you, it's your financial life, whether you need to focus on your wealth or your ability to earn or your ability to actually hold on to some money, your ability to save some money so you'll have some later. Many of you don't have the habits in place to do that. Well, this question, what do you believe about yourself that does not correspond with what God says about you, that's holding you back from accomplishing some of these things? Some of these things you need to focus on your family life, where you want your home to be a place of grace. And that's what we've called our home. When we built this house 17 years ago, actually the Clays, Linda and Wally, named this for us, gave us a book with it because they did a lot of the decorating and a lot of the work. And they called this the place of grace. And it has been for us, and it has been for those that we invite, to come and be here. So whatever your family life needs, whatever you need in whatever area of your life, we need to ask ourselves this question: what is it that I'm believing about myself that's got me stuck? What is it that I'm believing? So you need to ask yourself this question until you can figure out what you are believing. And to do that, you just back yourself up. What you're believing is based on some emotions that you have that's tied to some pictures that you have that's tied to some words that someone said or that you said, and now you believe that, and that's your new belief system. So you have to undo that. So you need to take some time, relive those negative feelings. And I know it's not comfortable, but relive those negative feelings, relive those emotions about yourself, and put them into words, then write them down so that you can rework it and rewrite it in a way that you can replace those negative words with the words that God has said about you. So that's what the next step is. Replace those words with the words of life. Replace those words with a description of your full potential based on what you believe God has said about you. Next week, we'll talk about your full potential. We're going to talk about, one other area that stops us even after our belief. Just too much to talk about today. But then when you get these new words, what you want to do is next is add the emotions that you feel as you imagine yourself living that fulfillment of what those new words are saying, what God is saying to you. And when you attach some brand new emotions to what you see about yourself, then you're putting yourself in a place where, especially, and that's how you meditate on it. And when you do that, that's what God says. So your full potential has to do with, every gift that you have, every talent that you have, every skill that you have. Think about the achievements that you've gone through before. Whatever it is that you've done that's made a difference in your life, that's improved your life, these are the things that you want to do and attach some good emotions to those things. And then the next step is what he told Joshua. He said, take courage. Take courage. Based on what God says about you, accept this new truth and trust that he wants to see you fulfill that potential. List those emotions out, attach those emotions to it, because when he says take courage, that's mental activity. Courage is your state of mind. It's, when he said to Joshua, be strong and courageous, that's what he's saying to you. Be strong and courageous. Don't allow anything to drive you from this new vision. Don't allow anything from your past. Don't allow anything that someone says to you now to drive you from the new vision that God has given you about yourself. Your courage is your state of mind in the face of these unknowns that you have. Your mind don't have a pattern for the new things yet. And so you have to take courage. Till your mind builds a pattern for the new things that you're talking about. It's just the opposite of keeping things the same. It's, the mind has nothing yet to compare these new things to. It has nothing to compare your new behaviors to. You need to create in your mind so that the behaviors can depend and rely on the new images that you have in your mind. Otherwise, you have nothing to form new behavior. You have no pattern to form new behaviors from. So the next thing that he told Joshua was, be careful to put into actions the words. He said, be careful to obey. That's what he's saying here. Your new behavior that your mind has not trained yet, you have to obey on purpose because you're not trained to do it by habits. So be careful to put into actions these words. Put the words into action. Start to align your new behavior with the reality of what God has said and believe that. Trust that. Actually, when he said don't turn to the left, don't turn to the right, what he's saying is do not deviate. You're going to be tempted because your old thoughts are still there. Your old behavior, which reinforces your old thoughts, is still there. But do not deviate. Do not depart from the new course that you're on. Do not depart from the new road that you're putting yourself on. Don't diverge. Do not digress. You're developing your mindset that you're developing is before you have any actions to support it. So your mind you're creating the courage in your mind to do something new that you haven't followed through on before because you don't have any patterns to make it a habit yet. So don't diverge, don't take a separate way when you're presented with that. Don't digress. Don't go down a different road. Stay focused. Keep your focus on the new thoughts. Keep your focus on the new behavior that you're starting. Keep your focus on your new thoughts instead of going back to the old thoughts that you had before. And then one of the last steps here is, he said, study the words. He said, take this book of the law. Don't let this book of the law depart from your mouth. He said, study the new words about you. Meditate on them. See, what we've done is just we've meditated on the words that he actually said. We've meditated on Joshua 1 and 8. I grew up meditating on Joshua 1 and 8. But you need to meditate on the new you that he said you are. Study the new words about yourself. Meditate on those words every chance you get to establish your new image. That's what you're doing. You're establishing a brand new image of yourself in your mind that next week we'll talk about this, that your mind will have to eventually accept and start to create new patterns so that you'll have new behavior that support the new person that you really are. So study these new words, then meditate on them. Don't let these new words depart from your mouth. Say them all the time. Say what I'm saying about you is what God is saying. Say what I'm saying about you. This meditating is mental exercise. Meditating is just like going to the mental gym. And when you go to the mental gym, you're doing exercises that this purpose is to actually build a brand new image of yourself. You're not building up your muscles and staying in shape that way. This is mental exercise so that you can get new patterns in your mind, so that you can get new images in your mind that can become habits. And once they become a habit, you are a force to reckon with. Once they become a habit, nothing can stop you from accomplishing what you really want to do, because you've gone through the process of meditating, got a brand new image of yourself, and you've created new emotions to go with this. So when you're meditation, that includes emotions too. And when you get all this stuff together, and you are meditating and you got new images, and now you got new actions that you can take from these images and from the emotions that you have, and now you got a whole brand new belief system about yourself. And that's what God said to Joshua next. He says, then you will have good success. Then you will succeed in whatever this new behavior is. You're trying to get yourself in shape for the show. The gym is behind the scene work. Meditating is behind the scenes work. Meditating is what you do when you're by yourself, when nobody is looking. You're building yourself up. Meditating is getting yourself ready so that your actions can be automatic. You'll be on autopilot when you do it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about what God said, because it's so in you that you know God said it, you believe it, and it's a part of who you are now. So when he says, then you'll have good success, he's talking about in whatever you do. You'll have good success in whatever behavior you want to apply to this. So focus your thoughts and your emotions to prepare for the actions. That's what you really got to do. To get into shape, focus your thoughts and your emotions to prepare for the actions that you want. And you will succeed in whatever it is that you want to succeed in. So God bless you today. Thank you for tuning in. I want to pray for some people because I believe that God wants us to do this. And I'm in this with you. See, I'm not saying this. This is, some of this material I've taught for years, but it's different now because I've followed some things for a while and I've done well for a while, sometimes years at a time, and then it seems like I fall off the wagon. Well, I am not falling off the wagon anymore. I am learning how to apply the words that God has said about me and apply that in my mind, focus on it over and over again, become the new person that he said I am, until my habits become automatic when I do that. And so if that's you today, I want to pray with you and for you before I come back and invite you to take a step with us today. So if you would bow your heads, please. Father, I thank you today for this message, the secret that is holding us back. I thank you for revealing this to us. I thank you for giving us the avenue to have a new mindset, the ability to create a brand new way of thinking about ourselves so that we can see what you see. We want to see what you see. So I pray that you'll reveal to that man, reveal to that woman, reveal to that college student, reveal to that person who's thinking about a new career, reveal to that person who doesn't know what they need to do next and the next step they need to take in business. Reveal, God, the way that you think about them so that they can see themselves in the way you see them and and that would create the courage for them to take the step that they need to take to actually start creating the actions and behavior that they need in order to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish.